Hello there once again, fellow peregrinos. Welcome to El Camino de Santiago Pilgrims podcast, where we talk about planning, preparation and packing for walking El Camino de Santiago, as well as tips, tricks and hacks to make your journey along the way a lot more enjoyable. This week we're talking to a pilgrim from North Carolina. We've got Clendenin on the line. Caitlin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So Caitlin, tell the listeners the Camino that you've walked.
I have walked the Camino Primitivo, which is the original route of the Camino.
Beautiful. Now imagine we're back on that trail and we've only just met. We're in a forest somewhere in Galicia. We can smell the eucalyptus pine trees. We're walking over a carpet of pine needles. It's early morning, the sun's coming up, and I'm going to ask you the question that always comes up on the Camino, and that is, why did you decide to walk the Camino?
Yes. The first time I heard of the Camino was probably back in 2010. I had a friend who had walked it years before that, and she had just told me about this experience that sounded like no other travel I had done. I'd gotten to travel here and there in different ways and capacities, but never something this unique, never something this rustic or kind of out there before. And so it was the first seed that was planted for me of what the Camino was all about. But then it was
I'm intrigued.
in October.
What did she tell you about it? What did she say about it? What convinced you?
So she just described it as an experience where you walk a lot and you meet different people. And she said there are these places called albergues where you stay, and they're just for pilgrims. And I had heard of hostels and I had stayed in hostels, but I had never heard of something that was so geared toward a pilgrim. And what was a pilgrim, and why would people go to Spain to walk this particular path? And I was just sort of intrigued with the whole process. She actually went in the winter time, so most of her stories were about the weather and how a lot of the albergues were actually closed. And so it was quite an adventure for her, and I was just stunned by the unique nature of this trip.
Now I'm intrigued because most pilgrims tend to walk the Camino Frances, the French way.
Yes.
And then second to that, correct me if I'm wrong, is the Camino Portuguese, the Portuguese way. So why did you decide to be different to everyone else and do the Primitivo?
Well, I have a friend who I walked with, and she had about 3 weeks off from work and said, she actually contacted me back in October of 2018 and just said, what would you think about walking the Camino? And so we had gone back and forth a lot about which route and how many days and how many miles. And most people I've had heard from or read about online would just walk a portion of the Frances and then maybe return another year and pick up another portion or walk the rest of the way. But I think for me, it was important that we were able to start and finish a route together. And so when we were looking at where we wanted to visit in Europe before and after the Camino, the Primitivo was just the perfect length. It would take us about 14 days to walk the 320 some kilometers. And we could start in Oviedo and finish in Santiago. And that just felt really right.
Okay, so for you, it was because it fitted in with your schedule and the time you had free, correct?
Sure. And I think, too, that the draw was that it was the original route. And learning more about the history of the Camino and how it started and why. It was just an interesting thing. And it was kind of, it was a route that I hadn't heard of. But when I started reading more of the history, and I also saw that it was the most challenging probably of the routes, toughest because of the steep up and down hills constantly throughout the route. But we were ready for the challenge, and it felt good to try it.
So in terms of the terrain, there's a lot of ups and downs.
Yes.
So maybe it's not a great one to start with for beginners then.
I would not recommend it for beginners. One funny thing was the first night in Oviedo, we stayed in our first albergue, and we were looking in the guest book where you could sign in, and there was a man who was leaving for the Camino the next day, and he was 80 years old, and he was like, yes, I've done this before. It's such a great Camino, blah, 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 Buen Camino. And we were just like, oh, great. Like if an 80-year-old can do this, we totally got this. And little did we know the challenge we were in for. I've never climbed so many hills in my life.
So is it pretty much like that all the way?
It is really until you get to the last 100 or so kilometers, when a lot more pilgrims start joining the path and you actually meet up with the Frances and Melita. And it tapers out a lot from there. It gets pretty level, but up to that point, it is all hills and mountains.
Wow. That's really interesting to know. So just to kind of go over very quickly the Camino Primitivo, because in all honesty, I don't know too much about it because it is definitely one of the trails less traveled. So you start in Oviedo. Yes. It's about 14 days, 300 and something kilometers. And it's pretty tough going. It's intense, even though it's a bit shorter.
Right. And it's nice because the route passes through both of the Spanish provinces of Asturias and Galicia. So you get to see both, and you see the differences and the similarities between the two. And it's just a very great in nature experience. It's very rural. It's very rugged. You might only have the choice between one or two albergues in each place you stop. There's not a lot of cities or towns proper that you pass through. It's very, very rural and very peaceful, a lot of solitude. I think I looked it up, and only about 5% or 12,000 people of the pilgrims on the Camino walk that route every year. So far, far fewer than any other route. And you can walk a whole day with only seeing maybe one or two people in a day.
Forgive me if you've mentioned this already and it's just kind of gone over my head, but what time of the year did you walk?
We walked in June. So
Wow.
We're coming up on a year since our Camino.
So for those that are looking for a quieter Camino at the busiest time of year, that could actually be an option.
It's a wonderful choice for that. Yes.
Thanks for that. That's definitely going to give my wife is nodding her head as she listens to me talk, thinking, sounds good, because we might be taking off on one pretty soon. All right. Fantastic for that. Thank you so much, Caitlin. We're going to circle back to a bit more about the Camino Primitivo in a little bit, but imagine you're about to pack your bags and go again. What would be the first three things that would be on your kit list, aside from the obvious, which would be your backpack, your shoes, and let's say your socks?
Right. I would probably say an outlet adapter with multiple connections. I had read about that on all the packing lists that I had researched, and it truly makes you a very popular pilgrim on the way. At night when people are trying to charge up their devices or their phones or whatever, it's just a great thing to have. And especially if you come from a country where you need a different outlet, that's a great tool to have. I would say an iPhone or a phone with a good camera. I made the mistake of packing a camera, and I ended up mailing it on to Santiago because of its weight. So just something to take easy snaps of things. And of course, the famous buff. I would never walk a Camino without it. It's just a great thing to have for holding your hair back, or covering the fact that you didn't shower in a shady town, or covering your eyes when you're sleeping in an albergue with 50 other people in your room. It's just a great Camino tool.
I've also found those buffs can come in really handy when sometimes you get a few pilgrims that forget to shower, and they're sleeping in quite close quarters, and you're like, I think I'm going to need to put that buff over my nose. So the buff can be a really, really useful thing to have with you for multiple reasons. The outlet adapter as well, and the iPhone for some quick snaps. And just on that thing as well, just whatever you do, just make sure that when you're taking your photos, and I think I've mentioned this on previous podcasts, but just in case anyone missed it, that you get those photos in the cloud pretty much immediately. My wife was taking photos in our last Portuguese Camino, and because we weren't connected to the internet as we travelled, we had some problems with the phone. We got back and we lost all the photos from our Camino. So we're still absolutely devastated about that. But three really, really good tips there. Thanks a lot, Caitlin. Now, I wonder if you'd ever done anything like this before, any hikes or long distance hikes day after day?
Nothing like this. No through hiking. I enjoy hiking on the weekends with friends in my area, but nothing at all close to this.
Okay, so going day after day like you do on the Camino, how did you choose your footwear? Did you get any advice? Was there any advice that stands out that you can remember that you could pass on? And in terms of talking about feet still, any foot care routines as well that you can throw into that so people know how to, one, get the best footwear that's most suitable footwear, and two, care for their feet when they're on the way?
Right. Taking care of your feet on the Camino makes a huge impact on your experience.
Agreed.
I saw so many feet and so many blisters. If I had $1 for every one, I could retire now. It can really make or break your experience and your attitude throughout the day. So I went straight to the professionals. I had read that basically your bag and your shoes were the two things you need to splurge on. And so I went to an outdoor store and just said, this is what I'm planning on doing. These are my needs. This is my budget. What can I do? And I was fitted for shoes. I was given the opportunity to try them and take them out on a hike. And if they didn't work, to bring them back. And I definitely splurged on my shoes, on my hiking boots, but they were worth every penny. I made sure to get waterproof. I made sure to get a roomy size. So I would suggest going up a size. Actually, I wish I had gone up even another size because your feet do swell as you're walking. A great pair of socks. I highly recommend Smart Wool, something that won't become odorous over time. Again, Pilgrim popularity, but also is really good with wicking moisture from your feet. I actually did not start having problems with blisters until maybe days 5 or 6. I was really lucky because our first few days of walking were in torrential downpour, but my feet stayed perfectly dry. And my friend who I went with was not so lucky, and she had horrendous blisters the entire way through. So I would say go and get fitted for some proper shoes, and the same with the bag. I had my bag measured, and that was an eye-opening experience because I didn't realize that based on the length of your torso or on your gait or the width of your hips, even as a woman, you can't just go for the cutest bag or the color bag that you want. Not to be sexist, because I think men could have the same kind of hang-ups maybe with colors of bags, because bags are cool things. But I think for me, I was going for a particular brand because that's kind of what everybody carries. But when I actually went into the store and was working with an expert, he directed me toward a different line that was actually better for my build and my body type. And I was so thankful because I didn't have any awkward rubbing or discomfort carrying my bag. So that was great.
Fantastic advice there. So just to summarize, you would recommend going to a shop where you can get professional expert advice, and also a shop that allows you to take the footwear away for a trial and see how you feel with them. And what was the name of the store you went to, just to know?
It's called REI.
Okay, I thought it might be. I don't live in the US, so I don't know what that stands for. Would it be recreational
equipment, maybe?
We'll go with that one. Yeah, Incorporated. Let's go with that.
Yeah, that's it.
Sounds about right, doesn't it?
Recreational Equipment Incorporated.
Love it. Okay, so REI, maybe you want to sponsor this podcast because people recommend you a lot. But anyway, so go to REI and look for a waterproof pair of footwear, and maybe go up a size, consider a bit more. Smart Wool socks. And I think that pretty much summarizes the main points of what you said there. Now, you mentioned you did get some blisters. How did you deal with them?
Well, thankfully, I encountered a couple very generous French people who came to my rescue about halfway through the Camino. They did the threading technique, which is when you actually drive a needle and thread through the blister to drain it and to keep it from refilling. And then they wrapped the blisters in plaster. And they thankfully had all those supplies on them. And so I was just the lucky recipient of all of that kindness. But that saved my feet, because there were a couple days in there when all I could think about was the pain in my feet with every single step. And that's taking a lot of steps and a lot of pain. So I was that truly relieved most of the pain, and I didn't have problems from that point forward.
Once they pierce the actual skin of the blister and the fluid drains out, I'm sorry if anyone's just eaten. Once you've done that, you're supposed to put some like iodine in there or something like that on you to like disinfect it.
Yes, that's right. They had all of that, thankfully. I had heard previously that you had posted on social media, don't take a whole first aid kit, and I completely agree with that. I massively overpacked with first aid and ended up not using half of or more of what I brought. But you can find what you need along the way, and you might find better products there than you would stateside if you're looking in the places I looked here.
Okay. Now, you've mentioned some, shall we say, newbie errors that you first made, like you packed a bit too much.
Yes.
And yeah, so were there any other mistakes you made that, were you to walk the Camino again, you'd be equipped with this information and this experience to make sure you don't do it again, and something you could say others shouldn't make this mistake as well?
I think just from a packing standpoint, definitely follow the guidelines about not carrying more than 10% of your body weight, especially when you're factoring in any food you're going to be carrying and your water. The water weighs a lot more than I realized when I had an internal reservoir for my bag that held 1.5 liters, and that adds a ton of weight. um, and also, I just ended up only using really two shirts, two shorts or tights that I wore every day. I had a lightweight fleece and a rain jacket, and aside from my socks and boots, and a lightweight cotton dress and some lightweight cotton pajamas to wear, that was all I needed. I really didn't need anything else. And I think I had just kind of gotten into this mode of, oh, I can handle this because I put on my bag and it didn't feel like that much. But trust me, when you get out there and you're walking that many miles, you want it to be as lightweight as possible. And even with a 35-liter bag, I definitely had overpacked, and I ended up shipping several pounds up to Santiago ahead of me.
Great stuff. Okay, so we'll ask you a little bit further on about exactly what you did send to Santiago. But yeah, I think the advice you said about around about 10% of your body weight. I mean, some people said, some people will dispute that, and but I think it's a good guideline to go with. And most people, someone, I think it was a guy called Tommy Pender in Essex, if you listen, hi Tommy. Tommy said about it should be 10% of your ideal body weight. So let's go with that, just in case we've had a few too many chips on lockdown. I think on my last Camino, for example, just for those that I've never walked it before, I had my backpack with 6 kilograms without food or water and 7.5 with food and water, and that was the most comfortable I've ever been on any Camino. So if you can get all of your stuff to weigh around that much, I guarantee you're going to feel good. But it does all boil down to making sure you've got everything you need with you to be comfortable as well. And if that does mean you've got to put a little bit more in, but you're going to have a bit of peace of mind because you've got a certain possession with you, then by all means, knock yourselves out. Okay, so let's talk about a few of your favourites on the Camino, because I'm sure we've all got a long list of favourites. What would be your favourite albergue that you'd recommend others stay in?
The Albergue Ponte Ferreira. It's a beautiful, beautiful albergue, 300-year-old house that has been renovated, but just maintains incredible charm, and stone walls and wooden rafters, and just a very cozy, cool place to be on a very hot Camino. Also, the two hospitaleros are from Amsterdam, and they have walked so many different routes of the Camino and had great stories to share. They offered a great pilgrim menu for dinner and brought us all together, and just were very gifted facilitators for great conversation and reflection on our Camino. It was probably a little bit over halfway through, and at that point my friend and I had gone with different groups of pilgrims and were walking separately. And so for me, coming in as kind of a solo pilgrim, it was such a welcoming and warm environment for getting to know other peregrinos on the way, and it was just wonderful.
So the Albergue Ponte Ferreira. Now, is that the name of the albergue or the town?
Both.
It's both.
I think
great.
The town is, yes. And the hosts are Ria and Tone, I think is how you say his name, spelled Ton. And their attention to detail and every aspect of the experience was just lovely. And it was more than just your €5 or €4 albergue, but it was worth the splurge, and the whole experience was magical.
Great stuff. Okay, so the Albergue Ponte Ferreira, 300-year-old building, stone walls, wooden rafters, pilgrim menu. I'm sold. I'm definitely going to go there. Thank you very much for the recommendation. From a favourite albergue to what about a favourite town, village, city, or maybe even hidden gem along the way? Is there a hidden gem somewhere on the Camino Primitivo that you'd recommend people go to? Favourite village or something like that?
So I thought a lot about what my favorites were on this Camino, and to be quite honest, there aren't. It's nature. I mean, that is the gem of this Camino. It's walking those paths and not having anyone around for miles. It's just so beautiful to be part of nature. I would say my favorite city that I actually did spend a couple nights in was Lugo. It's a walled city. I think it's maybe 17 miles around. You can walk the walls of the city. Has a beautiful cathedral, wonderful restaurants, just a very beautiful place to kind of stay for more than one night. And it feels like, especially for an American, to go to an ancient fortified city, it was pretty amazing.
So if you want something a bit different, then Lugo is definitely the place to go on the Primitivo. Make sure you stay over.
Right.
Is that, forgive my ignorance here, I know the Camino Frances very well, I know the Portuguese very well, not the Primitivo so well. Is that on the coast or is it inland?
It's inland.
Right, okay, so even more interesting as well. Great stuff. Okay,
Great.
So Lugo will be your place. What about a favourite restaurant, cafe, bar? You know, as pilgrims, we're always ready to be eating. So let's it's the first thing you think about when you wake up, and the you know, it's all you're thinking about all day when you're on the road. So let's give us a place to eat.
That's right. My most memorable meal was overlooking this giant reservoir called Embalse de Salime. It's on the way to, I think it's called Grandes de Salime. And it was good food. I had just a bocadillo, which is something that you would have along the way, just a sandwich. I think it was maybe pork and cheese, but the view was absolutely spectacular. So this cafe on the side of the road had this gorgeous balcony that overlooks the reservoir, and I could have sat there all day long. It was so peaceful, so beautiful. And I will also give special shout outs to some amazing pizza and a fantastic burger in Santiago, but I realize that sounds very American of me to say.
Absolutely not. You deserve a pizza after walking all that way.
That's right.
Another one of those home comforts as well. So, and maybe you could put that down to maybe some distant Italians in your family as well. Because
there you go. Yes.
Yeah, there you
go. Just
go.
Trying to tap into my heritage.
There you go. Well, mind you, your name sounds maybe a little bit. Should we say? Would it be right thinking it's got maybe some?
It is Scottish. Yes.
I was going to say Irish, but got some Celtic blood in your family.
That's it. Yeah.
Good
I wonder
stuff.
if the Celts would have liked a good pizza, though, as well. Who knows?
Haggis.
Haggis.
They'd be in haggis.
Maybe not so much.
And you know what else they eat? They eat Mars bars they eat fried Mars bars. Very disturbing.
Very disturbing.
I've never had one, but they do eat it, and Scottish pilgrims will probably swear by it. So, we don't know what we're missing, that's for sure. Okay, so we are now going to jump into some quick fire questions, okay? Before we get back to the main discussion. What would be your favorite Camino blog or book?
My favorite book was The Wise Pilgrim Guide for the Camino Primitivo. It was actually just updated last year, so it was very spot on. Every description of everything was just as it was. It was very helpful to know how far I wanted to walk in each stage, and it even showed the elevation profile, which for Primitivo walkers is a very critical thing to use as you're mapping out how far you're even going to be able to walk each day. That was my favorite book. And blog-wise, I think the Wise Nomads, that was really helpful for me.
Favorite Camino vlog or film?
Couldn't we all say the way, probably film wise. And then vlog, there's a guy named Mamo Air on YouTube, and he does a lot of traveling, and he had actually walked the Primitivo very recently and documented his journey. And I found that really helpful in the weeks leading up to my Camino.
Favorite food and or drink on the Camino apart from pizza?
Cafe con leche in the morning and Estrella Galicia the rest of the day.
Wow, yes, you've definitely tapped into the culture there.
Absolutely.
One thing you didn't need and wouldn't take again, something maybe you stuck in that package to Santiago.
My camera. And if I can get away with one more, all the extra clothes, especially rainwear. All I needed was my rain jacket, and I brought way too much. Everything I brought outside of what I was wearing was too much.
Can you be a bit more specific?
I brought rain pants and waders. Is that what they're called? Or the things you put over your shoes to keep rainwater from coming in?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely did not need that.
Yeah. Well, it's better to be over-prepared than under-prepared. And what did Benjamin Franklin say? Failing to prepare is preparing to fail. So,
right. Thank you, Ben Franklin.
Erring on the side of caution. One thing you wished you'd packed?
Honestly, nothing. I can definitely think of a longer list of things I wish I hadn't packed, but I felt very prepared, and I wouldn't have brought anything else.
Brilliant. One place you wished you'd stayed over on the Primitivo?
Honestly, I got to stay over in Lugo. That was my favorite place probably along the way. But Oviedo, I wish that I had not just gotten to the city and had my mind focused on leaving so quickly. I think it would have been a really neat city to stay a little longer and explore more, because it was beautiful and a lot of history there. Gorgeous cathedral. Just would have been a nice place to stay over.
So if you've got the time when you first arrive in your starting point, stay over an extra night maybe and explore. Soak it up.
Yes,
yeah,
definitely.
Okay. What would be your hardest part? What was the hardest part for you of the Camino, apart from going up and down all the time?
Yeah, I think walking it with a friend. It's a bit like moving in with a friend. You know, they always say that sometimes your close friends don't make great roommates because it puts a lot of tension into the relationship. And I think for me, I went with a friend. I thought we were more on the same page with our expectations and our viewpoints around the Camino, but I think we definitely had different expectations, and that proved to be really hard until we had peace with walking separately in the second half. But that was the hardest part for me.
Wow, that's a really interesting answer. I'd like to delve into that one a little bit more. But before we do that, what was your favorite thing about the Camino?
I think for me it was the time outside. I honestly think about the Camino every single day, and there's
you and me both.
Yeah, something about all that time in nature that just is very restorative and beautiful, and it makes you just appreciate more simple things in life. And that experience alone, just being outside for that long, changes you.
You're just mirroring something that I've said all throughout this podcast, and it was only a thought that came to me as I've been interviewing guests every week, and that is, it is the word I'm going to pick out from what you've said is restorative. It's so restorative. It's like when you reset your phone, reset your computer to factory settings, and your phone and your computer works like brand new again. And going on the Camino is just like restoring those factory settings. You go on the Camino, you spend whatever time it is on there, and you just feel like brand new again after you've finished. It's just a brilliant feeling. Okay, maybe a guilty...
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, sorry, I was going off the quick fire questions there, but a guilty pleasure you carried with you.
I'm not a quick fire person.
No, sorry, it was my fault. I took us off task.
No worries. A guilty pleasure I carried with me. This is funny, but they were Tootsie Roll Pops. My friend we had a bag of those.
Oh, what?
Have you never had Tootsie Roll Pops?
You know what? I spoke to you in the pre-interview chat, and I said I had spent a bit of time I spent 9 weeks of my life in North Carolina. And it's ringing a bell,
So back in the day, there were these commercials. It was an owl holding a Tootsie Roll Pop
Was
and
there a
saying,
song
"How
that
many
went with it?
licks does it take? Yeah, how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Pop?" And it was he would say 1, 2, 3, and then just bite it because he loved them. They were great little things. They didn't melt in our backpacks, and it was just a sweet little treat, especially in that last handful of miles heading into the next town. So we loved them.
Forgive my ignorance here. This isn't just something that's exclusive to North Carolina, right?
Right. They're not just exclusive.
So you can get them all over the US.
I'm sure, yes. They're kind of like blow pops, but instead of bubble gum, it's chocolate on the inside.
Right, okay. I don't know why, if I remember a song being associated with this thing as well, like a Tootsie Roll or something like that. Maybe I'm just imagining it.
Let me see that Tootsie Roll. Oh, yeah. That's definitely a song maybe from the 90s. Yeah, it's a good one.
Taking me back. It's taking me right back to being at summer camp. Yeah, wow. Thank you for that. Gosh, sometimes you forget the things that you remember, don't you? And that's taking me back to my summer in North Carolina. Thank you very much. Tootsie Roll, something like that. I don't know if it went like that. I might be just making it up, but it's definitely awakened something in my memory.
But I don't want to embarrass myself. Yeah.
No, go ahead. This is.
No, really, I insist. Let's move on.
maybe we'll ask you to finish with that. Finish on a high. Okay.
There you go.
Where were we? So you want a sweet treat, American pilgrims? Grab some Tootsie Rolls, and they won't melt in your backpack. That is a very good answer. Thank you very much, Caitlin. Absolutely. It's nearly as good as the answer that someone carried with them a snorkel and flippers to be able to swim in Finisterre, which I thought which is quite funny for me. But anyway, now I want to go back to what you mentioned in the quickfire round there. We're now in the slow fire round, okay? So
okay, good.
We can go slow, we go slow motion, go backwards, whatever you want. Now, some people might be at the point of choosing a suitable pilgrim pal to take with them. They don't want to go on their own. And I completely understand what you say. Some people make great friends, but not great travel companions. I know I've been on holiday with one of my very, very best friends, and after a week away with him, I thought to myself, I will never go on holiday with that guy again. And we still remain best friends to this day. And he probably thinks the same about me. Because we had very different ideas about what we wanted to get out of that time away. Any advice you would give in hindsight on choosing a pilgrim pal if you are going to need one or take one, or planning on going with someone?
Yeah, I think just a simple conversation about what are your hopes and expectations for this pilgrimage together, for this Camino. I think for us, we kind of thought we had similar outcomes in mind, maybe reflection or time to think or to process life experiences or to chat about the people we meet and things like that. But I think, the expectations about just the pace that we would go, that were different for us. Who we wanted to walk with, if we wanted more time in solitude or more time with new pilgrim friends, because that's one of the great things about the Camino is you will meet tons of people from tons of different places and have really great conversation and connection with them. But just kind of talking through as much as you're able, right? If it's your first Camino, you might not have a good gauge of what sorts of questions to ask, but just talk about everything before you go, and just hold everything with an open hand. I think one of the greatest pieces of Camino wisdom I gained along the way was that the Camino doesn't give you what you want, it gives you what you need. And I think it takes a lot of openness and trust to just let it happen as it does, rather than clinging to what your expectations were that it should be, especially with a travel partner.
Thank you very much for that advice. I'm sure it's going to give a lot of pilgrims food for thought if they are going to walk with someone. Now, what I like to do is, if possible, I like to hear Camino stories, because it is often, like you just said, the people that you meet along the way, the lessons that you learn along the way, and a lot of the times these come to light through the Camino stories. Is there a standout story? It could be quirky, could be touching, could be moving. A story that you like to tell people about the Camino. Maybe one that would convince someone to go if they were sitting on the fence and undecided.
Well, Well, I think going back to that quote that one of my friends, this woman I met from Oklahoma, had shared about the Camino not giving you what you want, but what you need. There was one day we were walking. The stage was the hardest day of the Camino Primitivo. There's two alternate routes. One is from Pola de Allende to Amesa, which is the one we did. And then there's what's called the Hospitaleros route. The Hospitales. I'm thinking of the host of Albergues. But and they are the two hardest climbs, some of the longer days of walking. And we were doing the route from Pola to Amesa, and it was blazing hot. I think we had left a little too late in the day, and we were just guzzling our water as much as possible. And we got to the summit and realized we were both out of water just right over the crest of the hill. We started making our way down, and we had both run out of water and had miles to go before we arrived in Amesa. And what was so incredible was there was this man who, I noticed him because he was tall, dark, and handsome in Spanish. But he was shouting to us from across the road when we kind of linked up with this highway. And at first I was frightened. Once I was like, okay, he's attractive, but this is scary. I never talk to strangers. He wasn't a pilgrim walking the way. And so I was a little bit nervous, but he had this huge smile, and he was waving us to come over, and he was sitting at this, I think it was a bus stop. And basically, he reached out to us with glasses and drinking glasses, and he gave us lemonade and tequila. And I just have to say, it was the quirkiest, weirdest thing. And at first, again, I was a little nervous about receiving, but his kindness and his warmth and his attempt to speak to us in English was just so endearing. And he honestly had just posted up, he was cycling with a friend, and they were stopping for a cold drink, and he was offering pilgrims passing through some refreshment. And it was just so out of the ordinary and so not something I was expecting it. And also just to have run out of water moments before, it was kind of like, seeing an oasis in the desert. We were overjoyed, and it gave us just that extra push to keep hiking on. And things like that happened all the time. I met really interesting people, heard very interesting stories. And it's just, I don't know if it's the magic of the Camino, or if it's just, again, having that open attitude to it. But really, there's inspiration every day.
Well, and now that man is your husband, correct?
I wish, but
no. Oh, okay, all right. But I thought it was going to be
that would have been such a great twist.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I had to ask because it sounded like you'd fallen in love with him. So he was your knight in tight cycling pants.
Yes, with tequila.
With tequila.
The best combination. Yes.
Right. Okay. Good to know. So, I mean, what you're describing there is just typical of things and moments and events and encounters that you have all along the way on the Camino, and I love to hear those stories, because they're the stories that people, and the reasons why people get so addicted to the Camino. And I think I've said it again, and you touched on the generosity and you receiving that kind of generosity along the way. And it's because I think when you're on a pilgrimage, when you're traveling, when you step outside of your everyday life, it brings the best out of you, and it brings the best out of the people that are traveling as well. And that's why maybe they say the Camino provides, because everyone's showing their best side. And, just like on, just to bring that back to compare it with the current situation, where lots of us are just coming out of lockdown, and we've endured 2-3 months indoors. And you hear stories like, my mum's a nurse, for example, and she's told me stories about people just paying for her petrol randomly, runners going past her when she's in a nurse's uniform, giving her a clap, stuff like that. Wow. And it's that kind of spirit that you're feeling now and seeing every now and again, but that is actually the norm on the Camino. And that's something you see a lot on the Camino. So thanks for sharing that story. Thanks for reminding me of how special it is. And thanks for showing those who haven't walked it before what they can expect as well along the way.
You're welcome.
Right, well, I'm going to now pretend that I am the guy in the pilgrim office in Santiago de Compostela. And I'm going to ask you a question. And that is, what was your motive for walking the Camino? Was it religious? Was it adventure? Was it tourism? Exercise?
Yeah, it was probably a little bit of all the above. I do feel like my friend and I were a couple of very few pilgrims who had any religious affiliation or really any religious interest in that aspect of the Camino. But I think my experience was I went for one reason, which might have been maybe more of a religious pilgrimage, or because many of my friends had walked the Camino. And I think what I got from it was maybe not at all what I went for. But I love adventure. I love to try new things, and I love a physical challenge. So I think there was also that as well. That was a big draw for me.
I can't remember what the exact statistics are off the top of my head, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, the majority of people say they walk for religious reasons. Now, I'm not a religious pilgrim. I don't subscribe to one specific faith, even though I'd like to say I do. I haven't really found my own spiritual home, but you have. And what did the pilgrimage do for you in that sense?
I think I can answer that question by telling you a story that my friend told me on that hardest day of walking. We were going up a pretty enormous mountainside, and again the sun was really beating down. And she told me about a cross country coach who would run ahead of his fastest runners, beside his middle of the pack runners, and behind his slowest runners, with his hand on their backs pushing them along. And in that moment in particular, I felt like the slowest runner in the pack. I was like having just to will myself to take every single step. And I think for me, I experienced God in that moment, having God's hand on my back, pushing me forward and carrying me on. And for me, the Camino absolutely connected me with this source of strength, and that now today, in the midst of what we're going through globally, has been something that I can access every single day. It's almost like on some cosmic scale, it prepared me for these strange days we're in, because I know that I have that resilience, but that resilience has a divine origin for me. So if that helps to kind of answer your question.
Absolutely. I mean, even though I couldn't say that I'm a Christian or I'm a Buddhist or I subscribe to one certain religion, I too have felt that divine energy as well on the Camino. And specifically, I think, even though I couldn't say I'm a Christian, I like to go into churches because I find it very peaceful there, and I find the vibe high, and I find that it's a great place to connect with that divine energy. Whatever one would like to call it, or should we say, whatever you'd like to call it, however you feel most comfortable connecting with that. And I've definitely felt that on the Camino, and you know, in a forest or in nature, I find that same divine energy, and so I can definitely relate to that. And I think lots of pilgrims that maybe aren't or don't subscribe to a specific religion like me could definitely identify with what you're saying. And I like what you said too about how your Camino experience has helped you through this moment now. Is there any lessons from the road that, because I think we are living in a time where we're having to go back to basics in many ways. Anything on the Camino any lessons from the Camino, that specific lessons that are actually blossoming now?
I think so. I think don't expect to get it all right away is something that if I had to kind of come up with a summary of the lessons that I learned is don't expect to get it all right away. And what I mean is when I first got back, I complained a lot about my experience, surprisingly. Now, a year later, I'm like, everybody should walk the Camino. But when those first several weeks back, to be perfectly honest, I was terrible PR for the Camino because I didn't get it. I just, all I could see were the sore feet or the blisters or the fallout with my friend or, what didn't work or what didn't meet my expectations. But then I think over the course of time, like I said, it's the one experience in my life that I think about every single day. And as I process the experience and I've taken the time to kind of unpack what that experience was for me, now I wouldn't give anything for that experience. And for me, it taught me that no matter how slowly you're going or moving through a situation or an experience, as long as you keep moving, there's real value in that. And I kind of feel like Dory the fish, just keep swimming, but just nice. Keep walking, not everything is revealed all at once. Not everything makes sense at one time, but we just keep going and we learn from it, and it all becomes to our benefit.
That is some of the nicest words I've heard on this podcast. Not everything is revealed at once. I really, really like that. So don't expect the answers to just jump out and kind of slap you in the face. It's gonna you're gonna process it, you're gonna unpack it, and in the end, it sounds like the Camino grew on you.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, I know you said you had a few trials and tribulations along the way, but describe the feeling when you eventually got into Santiago.
Oh, wow. The feelings that absolutely washed over me in that moment are, I will never forget it. It was like everything was glowing like a sunset. I definitely wept. I remember walking in and we left very early in the morning. I was walking with an older gentleman from Denmark at the time. We left at maybe 4:30 that morning from the previous, I think it's Padruso or O Padruso or something is the town. And we walked that final stage into Santiago and maybe getting there around 10:30 in the morning. And it was magical. It was to look up at the cathedral and to kind of know this was this sort of Wizard of Oz that I've been kind of fantasizing about and dreaming about what that experience would be like. But there was nothing quite like that moment of, oh, wow, this is really it. We're really here. We made it. And everything that had happened previously just kind of melted into that experience. And it was beautiful.
You said that in many ways you didn't get from the Camino what you were expecting. Did you get from that moment what you were expecting, or was it more?
It's interesting because as magical as that moment was and as exciting and as, fulfilling as that moment was, there was also this kind of sense that, oh, the journey has only just begun. That you can spend all this time and energy and planning and preparation and anticipation of reaching a certain city. But once you've gotten to that city, you're kind of like, oh, it's not about this city. Like this has been about the journey, and this is about where will I go next. And so while it definitely was this ending point, it also seemed to not be at the same time. It almost seemed to be the doorway through which more amazing and inspirational experiences would occur.
I mean, it sounds like you got actually so much from it. And I'm just wondering, making that transition from pilgrim to civilian, going back to your everyday life, what can someone do to make that transition as smooth as possible?
I think staying in touch with other peregrinos you meet on the way. Sometimes trying to explain the experience or trying to share about it with people who haven't had the experience can be, I don't know, a little bit of a buzzkill, but I think staying in touch with people who you've had that common experience with can be really fun and encouraging to share stories or to kind of remember and to tap into that time. Again, be patient with yourself as things continue to unfold, and just enjoy adding that to your list of experiences. Let it change your life, and don't wait too long before you plan your next one.
Speaking of which, have you got yours underway, your plans?
Oh, yes. I would love to. I was actually hoping to go back this summer and walk the Frances. And then as I was booking my flights, the whole world shut down. So I'm hopeful. I don't know about next summer. I know it being the big the Jubilee year of the Camino. There might be an influx, right? The whole year. That's it. It might not be the best timing, but I would love to walk the Frances. I also would love to do one of the coastal routes as well. Maybe, I don't know. I've heard good and bad about the Norte. I could see myself trying that one, or maybe one in Portugal or something. But there are a couple there that look good. But yeah, I definitely have hopes of going back one day soon.
Well, we're talking on Monday, the 25th of May right now, and two developments over the weekend. Firstly, the Spanish Prime Minister said on Saturday that the country is opening to international tourism from July, which is a positive step, though no actual specifics have been given about to which countries and whether or not, it's only Portugal and France. But they've also said today that foreign travellers will not be required to go into quarantine for 2 weeks anymore when they arrive in July. So, fingers crossed, maybe, though we can't make any promises, keep your eyes on the news, watch this space, because the Camino might be open to the whole world, or a large part of it, come July.
That's awesome. I hope so.
And whenever you decide to walk it again, I'm going to try and get your name said completely right. Caitlin Clendenin.
Yes, Clendenin with a C, but yes,
Clendenin.
You're spot on. Yes.
Great. I've got Celtic blood as well somewhere in my family tree, so that's maybe why I've got why I'm good at making that pronunciation. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for your stories. Thanks for your wonderful insight. Thanks for that lovely quote that not all will be revealed at once. Thanks for your recommendations. Thanks for giving us a tour of the Camino Primitivo, which we don't often get here on the podcast because most people tend to walk the Frances or the Portuguese. And whenever your next Camino is, like you said, just keep putting one foot in front of the other, which ties nicely into the Camino motto, which is Ultrea, move forward with courage. Caitlin, thank you so much. Buen Camino.
Buen Camino. Thank you.